Here, on the vast limestone plateau of the Yucatan, lies an epicenter of ancient magic and modern science. We stand at the foot of El Castillo, the Great Pyramid of Kukulkan, in the heart of Chichen Itza. Each year, on the vernal and autumnal equinox, a tide of humanity gathers, their faces turned to the sky to witness a miracle of light and shadow. They watch as the sun's rays sculpt the body of a celestial serpent, descending the stone steps, one ripple at a time. They marvel at the geometry, the astronomy, the sheer grandeur of the Maya civilization. They see a triumph of reason, but they are looking in the wrong direction. The true secret, the one that makes an archaeologist's hands tremble and catches in the throat of local guides, is not at the pyramid's peak, closer to the heavens. It is below, deep beneath the limestone foundation, where the world of the living ends and the realm of the dead begins. A place the Maya called Xibalba, the place of fear. In 2018, a team of researchers from the Great Maya Aquifer Project, led by Dr. Guillermo de Anda, took a step into that unknown. They were not searching for gold. They were not hunting for the tombs of kings. They were seeking the answer to a question that has haunted historians for more than 100 years. Why did the greatest civilization of the Americas, a people who possessed writing, advanced mathematics, the concept of zero, and a calendar more precise than any in Europe, suddenly choose to vanish? Why, in the 9th century, did they abandon their magnificent cities? Why were their palaces surrendered to the jungle? The answer lay in a place spoken of only in whispers by local shamans, a site long believed to be lost: Balam Ku, the cave of the jaguar god. This is no mere geological formation. It is a hermetically sealed time capsule, a vault locked 1,000 years ago at a moment of supreme desperation. But the story of this discovery did not begin in 2018. It began half a century earlier, with an event that still ignites debate and conspiracy in the scientific community. It is a story of fear, of what one man saw in the darkness and why he chose to conceal it from all of humanity. Today, we break the seals. We will traverse every meter of this subterranean labyrinth. We will conduct a chemical analysis of the very air trapped within ancient vessels. Using isotopes and lasers, we will reconstruct the final, agonizing chronology of an empire. This is not simply an excavation. It is a crime scene on a planetary scale, and the only witness is the cave itself. The year is 866. The jungle choking Chichen Itza is not the manicured landscape of today, but a wild, untamed territory. Local Maya farmers, clearing a plot for a milpa, their traditional cornfield, stumble upon a strange fissure in the earth. From beneath the roots of a colossal ceiba, the sacred world tree of the Maya, a cold breath emanated, as if from another world. In the suffocating heat of the Yucatan, where the jungle breathes a thick, humid air, a discovery was made not by design, but by chance. Local Maya farmers, clearing a patch of land, felt a change in the atmosphere, a cool, damp exhalation from the earth itself. They knew this scent. It was the breath of a cenote, a sacred well, or perhaps a cave. But they did not venture closer. An ancient genetic dread held them
And now comes the part no one talks about. But this is where the real
back, a fear woven into their very bloodline. For them, a cave is not merely a geological feature. It is the mouth of Xibalba, the underworld. It is a portal that can swallow a soul. Instead, they summoned an archaeologist, Victor Segovia Pinto, the esteemed director of excavations at the great city of Chichen Itza. He was a man of science, a pragmatist, with little time for mysticism or local superstition. He arrived with a small team of workers, expecting a routine survey, another piece in the vast puzzle of the Maya civilization. What happened next, however, would defy the logic of conventional field archaeology for more than half a century. Segovia descended into the darkness. He spent 3 days within the Earth's embrace, exploring the initial chambers of the cavern system. When he finally emerged into the blinding sunlight, he was a changed man. His skin was pallid, his expression haunted. His colleagues would later he could not articulate. By every rule of his profession, his next steps were clear. He should have immediately alerted the press, organized a large-scale expedition, and begun the meticulous process of cataloging artifacts. He should have strung perimeter tape and declared the site a landmark discovery. A find of this magnitude could have made him a global star, a second Howard Carter who had stumbled upon a new, undisturbed tomb. Instead, he gave an order that stunned his assistants to their core. Seal the entrance. Not with a simple gate or a pile of rocks, but to entomb it completely. He commanded them to wall it up with stone and mortar, to seal it so hermetically that not even a mouse could slip through the cracks. He brought nothing out from the darkness, not a single vessel, not one shard of pottery, not a solitary bead. He left it all behind, consigned once more to the silent, waiting dark. His official report was a masterpiece of academic obfuscation. A brief, dry document that mentioned, almost as an afterthought, the presence of a significant quantity of ceramics. He then buried this report in the deepest, most dust-choked archives of the National Institute of Anthropology and History. The coordinates of the entrance were scrubbed from all maps. The local villagers were instructed, in no uncertain terms, to forget what they had seen. Victor Segovia died in 1995, and the secret of the cave, which would one day be known as Balamku, went with him to the grave. He never spoke of it publicly. The question lingered for decades, a ghost in the halls of Mexican archaeology. Why? What had he encountered in the deep? Conspiracy theorists spoke of a curse, of an entity that was never meant for human eyes, something that broke his rational mind. But modern scholars, poring over his sparse and cryptic journal entries, have pieced together a different, more profound explanation. It was not a monster he faced, but a psychological collapse born of overwhelming sanctity. Segovia wrote of a crushing atmosphere, of the unnerving sensation of 1,000 unseen eyes watching him from the shadows. He felt he was an intruder, a profaner of a domain utterly forbidden. Perhaps, as a man deeply immersed in the Maya worldview, he felt the immense spiritual weight, the sacredness, and the pain of the place more acutely than any of his peers. Or perhaps, acting as a true
Most people stop watching right here. But if you continue, you'll discover something almost no one knows.
guardian of the past, he judged the technology of the 1960s to be too crude, too destructive for such a fragile context. He may have feared that his contemporaries would simply plunder the cave, reducing a complex ritual landscape to a collection of museum pieces, forever stripping it of its meaning. And so, he made an impossible choice: to preserve the discovery for the future, for us. That future arrived 52 years later, a symbolic number, a full cycle in the Maya calendar round. The year was 2018. Guillermo de Anda, a National Geographic explorer, spent months hunting for the entrance Segovia had worked so hard to erase. The jungle is relentless. It swallows paths, and the roots of great trees shatter stone. But guided by faded maps and the frail memories of 80-year-old men who were boys when the cave was sealed, De Anda's team was finally led to a nondescript pile of moss-covered stones. Beneath them lay the wall that Victor Segovia had built, a barrier not just of stone, but of silence and of time itself. A conversation begun in whispers half a century ago was about to resume. Half a century ago, from a fissure in the earth, a breath escapes. It is stale, heavy, and wet. The scent of millennia trapped in stone. The sharp ammonia of bat guano mixes with the mineral tang of damp limestone. It is the exhalation of a dragon, a warning from the underworld. The team is ready, clad in the armor of modern science. Their instruments sniff the air for the invisible poisons of methane and carbon dioxide. Laser scanners stand by, capable of mapping this subterranean world in real time, painting a digital ghost of the darkness. Their lights are weapons, powerful LED beams designed to pierce the absolute black. But the cave makes its intentions known at once. This is no grand portal. This is a throat, a narrow, constricting passage, a wormhole into the planet's core. To enter is to submit to the Shkuradior, the skin shredder. The first 400 meters are a physical and psychological crucible. The ceiling presses down, in places a mere 40 centimeters high. There is no standing, no sitting. Not even crawling on all fours is possible. There is only the slither of a serpent, belly down in the muck. You move through a liquid, viscous mud, a slurry of clay, and the excrement of countless insects and bats. Your back scrapes against the jagged stone ceiling. Your face is inches from a floor teeming with life. Whip scorpions, unnerving but harmless. The air itself is an enemy. Oxygen is thin. Carbon dioxide levels are dangerously elevated. Each breath is a labor. The heart hammers against the ribs, its frantic beat echoing in your ears. This is not merely a passage, it is a test. The ancient Maya called such tunnels the path of birth. The cave is the very uterus of the earth. To enter the world of the spirits, one must first be reborn, to endure the pain and compression of a new genesis. It is a profound psychological barrier. Claustrophobia, a primal fear, can seize even the most seasoned speleologists. Here, panic is a death sentence. To freeze in fear is to become a permanent obstruction, sealing the constricting, the stone jaws of the earth closing upon him, a conviction that he would be entombed here forever. But he pushed onward, propelled by a potent cocktail of adrenaline and the insatiable curiosity of an explorer. And then, the tunnel opened. The ceiling soared into blackness. He could stand. He could raise his head. The beam of his headlamp sliced through the absolute dark, striking the far wall. A cry escaped him, not of fear, but of pure, unadulterated shock. Because the wall was staring back. He saw eyes, hundreds of eyes. This was no empty cavern. It was a vault, a repository of the sacred. But not of gold. To the Maya, gold was merely a beautiful metal, the sun's own excrement. The ultimate currency was communion with the gods. Before the explorers lay 7 ritual chambers, natural grottos crowded with bizarre stalactites and stalagmites, a frozen gallery of subterranean monsters. And every inch of available space was occupied by artifacts, vases, plates, grinding stones for the sacred maze, and most importantly, the incensarios, the incense burners. They were enormous, complex ceramic vessels, some standing half.
Welcome to my channel. If you're fascinated by hidden truths, lost civilizations, and unsolved mysteries, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like so you don't miss what's coming next. Because what you're about to see will change everything.
A meter tall, each one sculpted into a divine effigy. The ordeal of the passage was not an obstacle to the treasure. The ordeal was the ritual. The pain, the fear, the struggle for breath, it was all a purification, a shedding of the mundane world to prepare the soul for an encounter with the divine. The artifacts left behind are not just objects, they are the silent witnesses to a faith so powerful it demanded a journey through the very bowels of the earth just to be born again. Fired with an almost supernatural skill, they were not mere vessels, they were effigies, gods given form in clay. Their numbers defied initial belief, not 10, not 20. A silent congregation numbering in the hundreds. According to the latest counts, more than 200 were found in the first chambers alone. They stood, in many had been shattered, a deliberate ritual killing of the object, an act designed to release its spiritual essence into the next world. Others stood perfectly preserved, veiled only by a delicate shroud of calcite dripped from the cavern ceiling over 1,000 silent years. It was as if the priests had just departed, the last wisps of sacred incense still clinging to the heavy subterranean air. Archaeologists moved through these rows with an almost unbearable reverence, each breath held, each step measured. The brush of a backpack, a single clumsy footfall, and a priceless chronicle of human faith could be reduced to a pile of anonymous shards. This was the single largest cache of ritual Maya ceramics ever unearthed. Most great tombs had been violated, either by ancient rivals or by modern looters. The temples stand empty. But this cave, Balamku, was untouched. No marauder had dared to brave the impossibly narrow entrance, nor the palpable fear of the spirits said to guard it. This was a Pompeii of the Maya world, a moment of profound crisis, frozen in time. But as the scientists began to study the faces staring back at them from the clay, a second, more profound shock took hold. A cultural shock. These were not the faces they expected to find in the heart of the Yucatan. The classic Maya rain deity Chak is unmistakable. The characteristic long, hooked nose, reminiscent of a tapir's snout, the bared fangs, the fierce, commanding expression. The face on these vessels was alien. Goggled circular eyes, ringed as if by spectacles. Protruding fangs, yes, but set in a different mouth, and a distinctive geometric headdress. This was Tlaloc, the god of rain, thunder, and war from central Mexico. The deity of the distant, mighty city of Teotihuacan, and later of the Aztecs, a god of strangers. What was this highland Mexican god doing in the heart of the Maya jungle, 2,000 kilometers from his mountain home? The discovery overturned generations of understanding, about the politics and religion of this era. It could have signaled a cultural expansion or even a military eye. The discovery suggests the Maya, terrified by a world falling apart, had performed the ultimate act of apostasy. They had turned their backs on their own gods. Their patron, Chak, had fallen silent. The prayers went unanswered. The rains did not come. And so, in their darkest hour, they turned to a foreign power, a harsher, more belligerent, more demanding deity. They turned to Tlaloc, a god who required blood, but who, in return, promised water. It was a change of religion enacted not for conquest, but for survival. To understand the depth of this betrayal, we must leave the confines of the cave and look to the sky. Or rather, to the sky as it was more than a millennium ago. Radiocarbon analysis and stylistic dating of the ceramics place them in a precise and fateful window of time, the late and terminal Classic periods, from roughly 700 to 1000 AD. This is the very moment of the Great Maya Collapse, one of history's most profound mysteries. Across the lowlands, the great city-states, Tikal, Calakmul, Palenque, were emptying out. Monumental constructions ceased. The lineage of kings simply vanished. The silent army of clay gods in their subterranean chamber were not just offerings. They were a final, desperate prayer, whispered into the darkness as a world came to an end. A testament to the moment when faith in the familiar is exhausted, and humanity facing the
This is where things get really interesting. What you're about to hear might
abyss will turn to any power, any god that offers the simple promise of rain. The jungle reclaimed them, stone by silent stone. Great cities, once teeming with millions, fell quiet, their plazas empty, their pyramids staring at a vacant sky. For a long time, historians debated the cause of the Great Maya Collapse. Was it war? A peasant uprising? A swift and terrible epidemic? The theories were many, but the evidence was scarce. The people had simply vanished, their population either perishing or scattering into the deep forests. Then, an answer began to emerge from the darkness beneath the earth. In a cave known as Balamku, a story was written, not in glyphs, but in the very chemistry of the rock itself. This story was confirmed by paleoclimatologists who descended into neighboring caverns to read a natural archive of immense antiquity. They took samples from stalagmites, the stone icicles that rise from a cave floor. A stalagmite is a planetary memory, a hard drive of climate growing drip by painstaking drip over millennia. Through isotopic analysis of oxygen, measuring the ratio of its heavy and light forms trapped within each layer, scientists could reconstruct a history of rainfall with the precision of a single year. When plotted on a graph, the data from the area was seized by a monstrous, unprecedented drought. This was no mere dry summer. It was a fundamental climatic shift, a mega drought. For decades, the rains simply ceased. Annual precipitation plummeted by as much as 70%, and for years it did not recover. For a civilization utterly dependent on rain-fed agriculture, a culture built upon the sacred gift of maize, this was a death sentence. The cenotes, the great open limestone wells that were the only source of fresh water on the peninsula, began to dry up. The water table fell by meters, retreating deep into the earth beyond reach. Across the kingdom, harvests failed. The grain held in magnificent storehouses dwindled to dust. Famine, began its grim march of their majestic capitals at the very foot of the pyramids built to honor the gods. Children cried out, their throats parched with a thirst that could not be quenched. In this crucible of despair, the priests and the elite sought a way out. They understood that their conventional rituals, the grand sacrifices performed atop the pyramids, were failing. The sky was closed, the gods had departed. And so they decided to go to the source. The Maya believed that water was born underground, that the true masters of rain lived in the subterranean depths. They believed that the very clouds that should have filled their skies emerged from the mouths of caves. They descended into Balamku. This was not a triumphal march. It was an act of final, desperate faith. A journey into the underworld to awaken a sleeping god and plead for the life of their people. Imagine the procession. In the deep of night, the jungle alive with unseen sounds, the priests, emaciated from hunger, their eyes hollowed, don their full ceremonial regalia. The iridescent feathers of the quetzal bird, heavy jade necklaces, intricate mosaic masks, and the skins of jaguars. They crawl on their hands and knees through a narrow, muddy passage, their skin tearing on the sharp rock, their fingernails breaking. They drag with them heavy ceramic censers, each weighing 15 kilograms. They carry baskets of food their own starving children would never eat.
And now comes the part no one talks about. But this is where the real mystery begins.
And bundles of firewood. They carry torches. Analysis of the soot on the cave ceiling reveals they burned fires of such intensity that the oxygen in the chamber was almost instantly consumed. In this enclosed space, 25 meters underground, this would trigger severe hypoxia, oxygen starvation. The brain, deprived of fuel, begins to fail. It produces hallucinations, euphoria, powerful visions. In the flickering torchlight, the dancing shadows on the walls would twist into demons and gods. To this sensory assault, add the smoke from the incense. Gas chromatography performed on the residue at the bottom of the censers has revealed a complex psychoactive cocktail. Its primary ingredient was copal, a tree resin that produces a thick, sweet, intoxicating smoke. It was a gateway, they believed, to the spiritual realm. In the darkness, gasping for air, their minds altered by chemistry and faith, they made their final offering. But the rains did not return. The gods remained silent. What we see in Balamku is not the record of their salvation, but the final, desperate act of a civilization brought to its knees. It is a chilling testament that when the fundamental forces of the planet shift, even the most profound faith and the most elaborate rituals are no match for the silent, indifferent power of a changing climate. This was considered the food of the gods. Tobacco, but not the tobacco of the modern world. This was Nicotiana rustica, wild tobacco. Its nicotine content is not merely higher, it is tenfold, even 20-fold that.
And now comes the part no one talks about. But this is where the real mystery begins.
Of a contemporary cigarette. Its effect was not relaxation, but a violent physiological convulsion. It induced a powerful intoxication, vomiting, and a disorienting shamanic trance. But it was not the only key to unlocking the other world. Forensic analysis revealed traces of other entheogens, plants that warp the very fabric of consciousness. The seeds of the morning glory, Turbina corymbosa, containing LSA, a naturally occurring cousin to lysergic acid diethylamide. The skin of the cane toad, which secretes a potent bufotoxin. And fungi, whose psychoactive properties were a direct conduit to the divine. The priests who consumed these substances were not merely praying, they were voyagers. They believed they were physically traversing the veil, leaving their mortal shells to walk in the realm of spirits. Here, in the dripping dark of the earth's interior, they saw their god, Tlaloc. They spoke with him. They heard his voice echo in the percussive fall of each drop of water from the cavern ceiling. And for this audience, they paid a terrible price. Upon the sacrificial altars, etched into the slow-growing stalagmites, scientists found the spectral residue of organic matter. Under the cold, revealing glow of ultraviolet light, the ancient stone gave up its secret. It was blood. The priests engaged in a ritual of auto-sacrifice, a profound act of bloodletting. They pierced their own tongues, their ears, their genitals, using the serrated spines of stingrays brought from the distant sea, or with knives of obsidian, volcanic glass sharpened to a molecular edge. They would then anoint strips of amate paper, fashioned from the bark of the ficus tree, with their own sacred blood. These offerings were burned in censers, the smoke of their life force rising through the darkness, ascending through the rock toward the heavens. It was a form of sympathetic magic, a desperate transaction of cosmic importance. "We give you our moisture, our blood, our vitality," the offering whispered. "In return, give us your moisture, give us the rain." It was the ultimate sacrifice of the self, performed to ensure the survival of their people. Yet the most chilling, the most soul-shattering detail unearthed from the Balamku cave was not the ceremonial vessels, nor the spectral traces of priestly blood. In one of the furthest chambers, where the floor is a thick, yielding layer of soft, wet clay, archaeologists discovered imprints. They were the tracks of bare feet. For 1,000 years, they had been perfectly preserved, sealed in the mud and veiled by a thin, crystalline crust of calcite, as if captured under glass. The size of these footprints compelled a stunned silence among the researchers. They were small, impossibly small. They were the footprints of children. This was no place for games. No child could have accidentally crawled 400 meters into the suffocating depths, navigating a narrow, winding passage through absolute darkness and primal horror. They were led here, or they were carried. The question was why? In the mythology of the Maya, and particularly the Aztecs, whose influence is clear in the worship of Tlaloc, the rain god had a specific and brutal requirement. He cherished children. As pure, innocent beings, they were considered closer to the spirit world, and it was their tears, above all, that were believed to summon the rain. The more a child cried before its death, the more abundant the ensuing downpour would be. No mass graves have been found in Balamku. Not yet. Perhaps the bodies were consigned to the flooded siphons, chasms of black water still beyond the reach of cave divers. Perhaps they were cremated, their ashes scattered. But the mere presence of children in this subterranean hell, a place with barely enough air to breathe, where shadows danced in the torchlight and intoxicated priests shrieked behind monstrous masks, speaks to a society pushed to the very brink of despair. Parents were surrendering the most precious thing they had. They were sacrificing their own future to prolong their present for just one more season of rain. This place is saturated not only with water, but with the terror of children who walked into the darkness and never returned. And it is haunted by the silent agony of the parents who stood waiting outside, staring at a silent sky, for a rain that would never be enough to wash away what they had done. The analysis of the artifacts revealed a breathtaking truth. This was no haphazard collection of forgotten things, no simple warehouse of the sacred. This was a deliberate construction, a model of the universe, a mandala rendered in stone and clay deep within the earth. At the very heart of the main chamber, a colossal stalagmite rises from the cave floor, a natural pillar transformed by belief into the axis mundi. For the ancient Maya, such formations were never mere geology. They were living conduits. This was their world tree, the Yaxche, the great cosmic axis connecting the celestial plane of the gods, the terrestrial world of mortals, and the shadowy depths of the underworld, Xibalba. Around this central pillar, positioned with astronomical precision, are the incense burners. They mark the four cardinal directions, the sacred corners of the cosmos. 4 directions, 4 winds, 4 sacred colors. Red for the east, the rising sun. White for the north, the ancestral realm. Black for the west, the dying light. And yellow for the south, the sun at its zenith. Here, in the suffocating darkness, the Maya were attempting to recreate the fundamental order of the cosmos in a world that was plunging into chaos. They were building a microcosm underground, a perfect, stable reality, in a desperate attempt to repair the broken macrocosm above. This was an act of magical engineering, a ritualistic intervention to mend a fractured mechanism of weather and time. Every vessel placed, every stone turned, every whispered incantation held immense significance. An error in this subterranean ceremony, a single misstep in this sacred choreography, could spell doom for the entire city-state above. But within certain vessels, a more tangible hope was discovered: the charred remains of seeds. Maize, beans, squash, chili peppers, and the sacred cacao. These were not merely offerings to appease a deity. This was a genetic bank for a day of judgment. In a world where the surface sun scorched the fields, where the seed stores were failing, the priests secreted away the finest, most viable grains
Welcome to my channel. If you're fascinated by
into the cool, damp sanctuary of the cave. They hoped the gods would accept this ultimate gift, or perhaps in a more pragmatic act of faith, they hoped that one day the rains would return, and these seeds, the very foundation of their life, could be retrieved and sown anew. They were trying to save the essence of their existence, the very DNA of their civilization. The exploration of Balamku has only just begun. The team, led by archaeologist Guillermo de Anda, has charted a path of nearly 500 meters. But modern geo-radar and laser scanning technologies paint a picture of a far vaster reality. This is merely the antechamber. The system of corridors is a labyrinthine network that stretches for kilometers, plunging deeper into the limestone bedrock. It descends toward the water table. There, in the profound depths, the tunnels are utterly transformed. They are flooded. Crystal clear waters from subterranean rivers fill the passages, marking the beginning of a new and perilous frontier: underwater archaeology. This is its most complex and dangerous form. Divers now prepare to enter the siphons, narrow, fully submerged wells that constrict the path forward. A theory born from the unique geology of the Yucatan Plateau suggests an almost unbelievable connection. It posits that Balamku is not an isolated system, but is linked to the other great caves of the region, and perhaps to the great cenote that lies directly beneath the primary pyramid of Chichen Itza, El Castillo. In the year 2015, electrical resistivity tomography confirmed the existence of this immense subterranean lake beneath the pyramid's foundations. If Balamku is indeed a secret passage to this sacred water body, then we stand on the precipice of a discovery that could redefine our understanding of the Maya. For the waters beneath the pyramid may hold far more than simple offerings. They could conceal the remains of kings, caches of gold and jade, and perhaps the most valuable treasure of all, hieroglyphic panels detailing the lost histories of their dynasties. A library of knowledge hidden by priests in their civilization's darkest hour, secreted away in the heart of their most sacred site to save it from enemies and from oblivion. But for now, the path is guarded by water, by deep layers of silt, and by immense rockfalls. Robotic probes cannot navigate the treacherous flooded terrain. For human explorers, the supply of breathable air is the ultimate constraint. Every meter gained is an act of immense courage and profound risk. And yet, the cave continues to offer its secrets. During a recent scan of the walls, a previously unknown side chamber was detected, another sealed door in the darkness, waiting. It is a testament not only to the fragility of a great civilization, but to the fierce, unyielding hope that even in the deepest darkness, a seed of the future can be preserved, waiting for the rains to return. Deep within the earth, an entrance presents a chilling paradox. The passage is deliberately sealed, choked with stones piled high. But the work was done from the inside, a final, irreversible act. It begs the question that haunts the silence. Who was the last soul to place those stones, entombing themselves in the eternal dark? Was it a priest, choosing to perish alongside the gods they served? Or was the chamber meant to contain something so sacred or so dangerous that it could never again be seen by human eyes, not even by their own people? For now, archaeologists do not dare to break the seal. They approach this threshold with the reverence of a surgeon tending to a delicate wound. Miniature cameras, extensions of the human eye on threads of fiber optic light, are painstakingly threaded through the narrowest of gaps between the ancient stones. On the screens above, ghostly contours materialize from the gloom. Shapes that could be textiles, fabrics that should have surrendered to dust 1,000 years ago, yet may have survived in the cave's unique anaerobic embrace. Wooden idols, scattered bones. It is a chamber of pure potential, history's own Schrödinger's cat. Until the seal is broken, anything and everything is possible within. The caution is born of knowledge. The humidity and temperature inside this cavern have remained in a state of perfect equilibrium for millennia. To open it, to allow a torrent of dry surface air to rush into the void, could mean the utter destruction of priceless organic artifacts. They could crumble to dust within a matter of weeks, lost forever. And so, the study of Balamku proceeds with infinite slowness, with a respect reserved for an open wound on the body of history. This discovery is more than a mere sensation destined for a museum display.
And now comes the part no one talks about. But this is where the real mystery begins.
It is a letter, a final, desperate message sent across the abyss of time. It speaks of a civilization that charted the cosmos with breathtaking precision, a people of advanced mathematics and intricate architecture who raised cities from the jungle floor so vast we are still uncovering their bones. They possessed art, astronomy, and a complex written language. And yet, they stood defenseless before a crisis of their own making. Their insatiable need for lime plaster to sheathe their monumental pyramids demanded that immense forests be fed to the fire pits. This deforestation, scholars now believe, crippled the landscape, exacerbating a catastrophic drought. They had engineered the collapse of their own world. When the crisis finally came, their sophisticated technologies offered no salvation. Their elite offered no solutions. Their gods fell silent. And so they retreated into the bowels of the blood of their children to appease forces they no longer understood, rather than confronting the real, systemic problems they had created. It is a terrifying parallel to our own modern age. We too are altering our climate. We too are exhausting our resources. We too place our faith in the hope that technology will provide a last-minute salvation. But Balamku is a stark reminder. There are forces with which one cannot negotiate. There is a line beyond which lies irreversible collapse. When we gaze upon the photographs from that fiber-optic probe, at the distorted, leering face of the rain god Tlaloc emerging from the blackness, we must remember this was among the last things a Maya priestess saw. Her eyes filled with a mixture of terror and hope before her world was extinguished forever. Her prayers were not answered. The cave of Balanku is therefore not a tomb of gods, but a monument to human desperation. A timeless warning that nature always, inevitably, has the final word. The true dilemma is not whether we should risk disturbing the shadows of those terrible rituals that still linger in the dark. It is whether we are capable of reading the message they left behind. A message carved not in stone, but in the silence of a self-made tomb, before we are forced to write our own. The questions we pose define the boundaries of our understanding. Each answer, hard-won from the silence of the past, only serves to illuminate a dozen new inquiries, each more profound than the last. The narrative does not end here. It merely pauses, awaiting the next discovery. For the pursuit of knowledge is a relentless current, pulling us ever forward into the next chapter, the next mystery. What we have witnessed is but a single thread in an infinite tapestry, a story that continues to be woven with or without an audience.
Wait, this is not the full story. The most important part is just